Hey y'all. Um, so didn't do much today. Went out to eat at Fuki down at Pearl Kai Shopping Center and had the pork belly plate, and that's pretty much it. Just stayed at home, did a little bit of work, and had a few calls. Got a bunch of spam calls. I guess this political season, I got a spam call from Willa Sparrow and a bunch of other ones. So the spam calls are coming from local phone numbers. So yeah, usually I just ignore those. I don't know why I picked it up. um, Sometimes they leave a message, sometimes they don't. But yeah, usually I just ignore them. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the episode 3 of uh, Raised by Wolves, and I just looked at HBOMax, and episode 4 actually came out today. I think it's on East Coast time, so it might have come out midnight on the 10th, right? So East Coast time, it's the 10th already. Um, but anyway, that's episode 4. I just got through watching episode 3. After binge watching the rest of season 2 of of Cobra Kai, which I'm really enjoying. But I'll do a review on Cobra Kai later. If you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, it's on Netflix. It was originally on YouTube, but it moved over to Netflix, so that's kind of cool. Okay, so anyway, COVID-19, we have 100 cases today. We're still pretty low on the tests, which is at 1486, and that gives us a 6 to 7% positive cases. So the number is still kind of high because we're such a low number of tests, um, and 100 positive cases. So let's see. They still haven't updated the hospital bed numbers. Uh, Actually, it looks like they did the ICU beds. Actually, the general beds they haven't updated, but the ICU beds looks like it went down a bit. It was at 60% right before. So in use, yeah, definitely. I think it was like 147. Now it's 138. But the COVID number seems to have gone up by a couple of people. So that's interesting. And let's see. Again, the mode of transmission they still haven't broken it down. The community number needs to be broken down. I mean, that's such a high number. It's 2302, and we don't know what community spread means. So they need to figure that out. There's another site. I saw a press conference today. Let's see. What was it? covidpow.org. So I don't know exactly what the point of this is. They in the press conference they talked about it, and basically it's like a hui of private sector companies. So here you got Hawaii Pacific Health, Queens Health, HMSA, Bank of Hawaii, Hawaii Community Foundation, the state, and some other like, oh, Alani's on there too. But it's kind of weird. Like they talked about it getting more information out to the public about COVID, and that they wanted to tell stories that would not only inform but help shape policy, uh, depending on the stories, right? Or based on the stories. Um, so you can actually submit your own story if you look at share your story up here. There's a button that says share your story. You can actually submit in a story. It's a Google form, which is kind of low tech. I don't know why they did it in Google Docs, but you can actually submit your own story. Um, I'm not sure if they're gonna include it in the site, because actually the stories that they do have on there, it looks like it's very little short video interviews or video people talking to a video camera. So I don't know who's producing it, but I mean, there's not that many stories. Like if you click on this, it's just a video, right? And I think it's designed to be shared in social media, but I don't know. I'm not sure exactly like what the point of this site is. There's very little information on here. But maybe they're building it. I would think they would build it out first and then hold a press conference on it. I mean, not really sure the point of it. So again, the information that they do have on COVID is right here, and it's the same information that's on the Hawaii COVID-19 dashboard, which is by the Department of Health. It's just presented in a more concise and uh, you know easily digestible format, but it also doesn't have all the information, right? So the dashboard has more information on here. So again, I don't understand what the point of this is. I don't know. I don't know if they were using care money or if it was a grant to produce this website, or if it's just purely um, privately funded. I don't know. But anyway, I mean, it's another site to have, and yeah, I mean, from a business standpoint, because like I'm in digital, media. Um, this looks to me sort of like a funnel type site. It's just looking at it because the information is so sparse, but having this URL, it seems like a way to game the search engines and social media search and discovery algorithms. Um, so, for example, like all of the collaborative group here, right? They're all posting COVID information. Um, but the way search engines work, if I'm searching for COVID information, right, COVID sites, um, it might not bring up like Bank of Hawaii. That's kind of weird, right, to have it bring up Bank of Hawaii. And maybe COVID information is not something that Bank of Hawaii wants to have on their site. Um, so this is kind of a place where they can consolidate information and have the search engines bring it up to people if people are searching for COVID in Hawaii. Um, and it has media partners here. So I don't know. I mean, that's what it looks like. It looks like a way to bring viewers or web traffic to this site, and then I don't they'll probably be collecting information, right? Collecting data. There's analytics. They're tracking it, um, and I don't know if they're going to share the information amongst the collaborative and media partners. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just weird because all of like people's stories, you can find it on social media, and then it just gets shared via social media. And if it's attractive to of interest to the public, they'll spread it around. So it's kind of weird that they put it on here, and they have so little information. Um, there's tons of stories, right? I mean, we all have stories of how our lives are being affected by COVID. So it's just weird that they have so little information on here right now. And then the data side, it seems with all the data that is available, publicly available, this is, you know, I don't know. This looks kind of like a dashboard type information, but if I wanted to, uh, I don't know, get more information, uh, it's not going to give me that information, and it doesn't provide me anything new that I can't find on, the Department of Health website. So, um, but it's still of interest. I'm going to keep an eye on it, and again, it's definitely a lot easier to look at than this guy, right? But this guy has a lot more information. So I mean, even like survivor stories, it's like it's the same thing, right? It's the same. Yeah, I don't know why they would have the same information, right? Survivors, I don't know why they wouldn't just put it all in one place and have, instead of having it spread around. Um, but from a digital marketing standpoint, spreading it around is kind of a good thing, right? It makes discovery easier. It People can stumble across upon the information in various ways, and just, I mean, come on, this site. Look at this site. It's just it's ugly. It's horrible. It's not pleasant to look at. Um, and this is definitely a lot nicer. So anyway, yeah, they they had this press conference today, and it just wasn't really informative. I think I had a link on my Facebook page about it, and reading the comments was pretty funny. The comments are always great whenever they have press conferences and stuff. You really get a feel of how people think, and you might not necessarily agree with it, but that's what people are thinking. So I like to read it, and sometimes it's frustrating sometimes, and at other times it kind of brings a smile to my face. So uh, this is something that I was kind of surprised it made it into the news. But like, we're all thinking this, right? Uh, so Lieutenant Governor Josh Green is saying like the order of utilizing the park, but you have to be the park and beaches and hiking trails, but you have to be alone, is nonsensical, which I think the vast majority of us who are not medical professionals, who are not political people, when we heard the announcement, we were like, okay, that's kind of silly, right? That's kind of a silly announcement to make. The way I interpreted that message was that, yeah, they're going to reopen it. They want to reopen it, or maybe the public has been demanding that beaches, parks, and hiking trails be reopened. But the city and county does not want you to actually use them. So they're opening it, but they don't want you to use it, which is kind of a mixed message, right? And that's kind of like what I keep saying over and over again. In an emergency, it's really, really important that the messages from authorities are very, very clear, and it's something that people can buy into, right? And then that's where they'll follow it. Kind of like like the lockdown. The lockdown made sense. What didn't make sense was the week before the lockdown, when they said we're going to sort of lock down things, or we're going to lock down the beaches and parks, but leave like gyms open and other, you know, basically any free activity that you can do in nature where was going to be locked down. But if you had to go and pay for stuff, um, you know, you could do it. So that was kind of a mixed message, and then they locked it down, um, as they, which made sense to people because we were having this huge spike. So, but then they go back to this kind of crazy, nonsensical message of we're going to reopen stuff because it doesn't make sense to us, and everybody is telling us it doesn't make sense to have it close. So we're going to reopen it, but we just don't want you to use it. So we're going to make it, you have to be solo, right? You can't be with people. And granted, um, I mean, if you're gonna lock it down, just lock it down, right? I mean, at least that's not a mixed message. People can understand that. Um, it's just silly. So I don't know what Josh Green, if he has any pull or if he can fix that. But that, so the parks and beaches and hiking trails are going to reopen. Um, what is it, tomorrow? And I mean, we kind of know what's going to happen, right? I mean, at first, people are going to kind of test the boundaries and go out there. The parking lots are going to be open, restrooms are going to be open. They can test it out, see like what the enforcement's going to be like, and anywhere that there's a weakness, people are going to go in groups, right? Like, and it's safer. Like if you're going to go hiking, especially some trails, uh, like you should not be doing that alone. Like I do not, as a hunter ed instructor, we tell people don't go out hunting alone. There's just so many things that can go wrong. And again, you might be far away, um, from help. Like if you're half a mile in, that's kind of far, right? Half a mile into a trail, and you sprain your ankle or something, or you fall down and you break, you break your leg or something like that. It makes it difficult, if not impossible, for you to get out, if you're by yourself. So, um, yeah, that's just not recommended, from a safety standpoint, uh, to go and do things by yourself. Even fishing, uh, things can go wrong, right? Like people fall off the cliff into the water. They get, a big wave hits them and washes them out. If you're by yourself, you're just screwed. So, yeah, it's just silly. So anyway, it's kind of funny. Like Josh Green keeps, he's pretty outspoken about that kind of stuff. One thing that he did say, I'm not sure if it's here in this article, but on the news. Oh, here it goes. It says, he says, to be frank, the recommendation is not scientific, not medical or scientific. And that's true. Like there's no rhyme or reason for that. There's so many things that they could have done, um, like just no tents, right, on the beach. That limits how many people go to the beach. Um, just keeping a distance, right, between people. That keeps, like, if you're gonna have a party, people are gonna gather together. If and a cop can just readily see, a big group of people crowded together closely and know that that's a problem, and they can go and break it up. But like solo, like everybody's solo, right? Like if I'm sitting on the beach and I go out there with somebody else and they're just, a little ways away, how is a cop supposed to know that we're together? You know, um, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. And again, like Josh Green says, you should be able to go to a beach and park with your immediate household members because you're already exposed to them, and that is not a scientific or health threat. and that, that makes sense too. So again, like, we don't want large groups gathering, but at the same time, like, if you're going to the beach, like, people who you're living with, I mean, you're already exposed to them, right? And you don't want them to expose themselves to other people, so that's why you do the social distancing. But if you're already together, like husband and wife, brother and sister, or whatever, father and son, mother and daughter, it's, you're already exposed to each other. So it just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, so a lot of people are coming out and speaking out about that, and for good reason, because it's just silly. It does a disservice, I think, to the public when your messaging, from a government standpoint, or anything, like even a private company, like if your messaging is not clear and people have a difficult time making sense of it, from a private sector standpoint, you lose money, right? Like if you're trying to have put on an event and people don't understand, like what the event is about, or your messaging is kind of strange, you know, less people will go, right? If you're trying to sell a product, people don't understand the product, they're not going to buy it. Well, from a government standpoint, when you're trying to control people's behavior, you need to be very clear about, your message has to be very clear, and they're still struggling with that. So that's not giving me a lot of confidence about moving forward. And like, what are they gonna do when after the next 2 weeks goes by and they're thinking about reopening businesses? How, like, is it going to make sense, right? How they reopen businesses. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. So anyway, that's the coronavirus update. 100 people. Uh, I think there was. I'm trying to find out what the deaths were, and it doesn't show like what the deaths were for today. I don't see it here. This is just, maybe that's why you go to this one. uh, but even this one doesn't really show fatalities, right? So anyway, I wanted to talk about this new series on HBO Max. I talked about it before. Um, I'm on episode 3. Episode 4 just came out today, and it's a sci-fi. So it's not sci-fi historically is kind of a very niche genre for entertainment. Um, the original Star Trek, for example, really didn't have, while it was aired, uh, it didn't really generate that big of a following, and it could have been, like the time period, but it's not like an action adventure like real sci-fi-ish stories are. It kind of makes you think about things socially, politically. Usually, like, there's some kind of futuristic element, and they're trying to paint a picture of what it would be like if something were a certain way, right? And that's what sci-fi is. It's kind of like Twilight Zone, for example. That's kind of more of a has that kind of sci-fi element to that genre. What are like what would happen if something? And so, Raised by Wolves, uh, in the first 2 episodes, we find out, like, okay, there was this big war. There's two factions: the religious faction, which is the Mithraic people, and the atheist group. So the atheist group loses the war, and they're all but wiped out. And they send two androids named Mother and Father with some embryos to repopulate, the human race with their atheist beliefs on this new planet. The Mithraic people are in this ship called the Ark, right? Biblical kind of thing. And the Ark has a lot of people on it. So, right there, it kind of shows you like the difference in mentality, right, between the religious people who um, the living is important, and the atheist people is more just like if you have the elements of life, you can just rebuild it later on. So you can leave everything behind and just rebuild life. And so that's what the androids do. Is mother actually gives birth um, to this group of children. But then we also find out like all the children die from some kind of a sickness, uh, except for one, Campion. He's the only one who survives. So it's basically mother, father, and Campion, and that's the atheist group now. Um, then we're introduced to these two soldiers on the Mithraic side. And in episode 2, we find out that they're not really Mithraic believers. They're actually atheists who assume the identities of two Mithraic people. And in order to flee the planet, which they haven't really shown yet what happened to it, I guess it got destroyed. They wanted to get on the Ark because, again, like the atheist group just wanted to send the androids. They didn't want to take any people. So these two soldiers assumed the identities of two Mithraic soldiers, and they get onto the Ark. Uh, so in episode 2, at the end of episode 2, we find out like they're not alone on this planet, on Kepler 22b, and that the camp that Mother, Father, and Campion are in gets attacked by these creatures, and we never saw those creatures before. But Mother, using her abilities as a necromancer android, destroys the threat and saves everybody. So it opens up with episode 3 opens up with Father kind of examining the remains of the destroyed creatures, and all he can find is a claw, right? So, and that's just the way Mother works. Like Mother has this, I don't even know what kind of weapon it is. She basically like screams and then people explode. So that's her power. So Father only finds the claw, and he wants to examine like what exactly these creatures are. So in the last episode, he kind of makes a remark to Mother, like, it'd be great if we had a specimen that you didn't destroy, so that he could study and find out exactly what it is, because they thought the planet was deserted. So anyway, in episode 2, Mother destroys the Ark. The Ark actually made it to Kepler 22, I think, like years later. So Campion is, I don't know how old he is. He might be like 10 years old or something. And the Ark finally makes it to Kepler 22. And then the androids run into the Mithraic soldiers. So seeing them as a threat, Mother ends up destroying the soldiers and also flying up and destroying the Ark itself. So the Ark crashes on Kepler 22 and destroys most of the survivors. So there's just a handful of survivors left. but she takes the children. So there are some children, right, on board, and the two imposter Mithraic soldiers, Marcus and Sue, they actually have a son, which is not really their son, right? It's the son belongs to the original Marcus and Sue, not the imposters. But the imposters kind of, um, you know, they play along, right? Like they're the parents. So anyway, so the kid Paul is part of this group of children that mother abducts and brings into the camp, and that I think that's part of her programming. Her programming is to repopulate the human race, but all of her kids died. So with Campion, there's no way to reproduce the human race, right? It's just Campion's the only human in that camp. The other two they're just androids. So with this new group of people, maybe they can reproduce, right, later on. Well, anyway, the kids start getting sick. The new group of kids, they start getting sick too. And so we're led to believe or suspect that there's something about mother or father that's poisoning the kids. And we don't know if it's malicious or accidental. Um, but we don't know. All we know is the kids, all the humans except for Campion gets sick in that camp. So that's kind of one of the underlying story arcs. Marcus, which is the imposter Mithraic soldier, he survives, and he tries to convince the remaining people to come and help him rescue his son. He wants to get Paul back, but they're afraid, right? No one can do anything against Mother. She seems to be like this very powerful and destructive android, and even their guns and stuff doesn't do anything to her. So they're afraid. They don't want to confront her. So he tries to figure out a way where he can rescue his son, um, you know, and still keep his cover, basically. So mother's raising the kids. The kids again are brought up with this religious belief system. They haven't even heard the story of the three little pigs because they only are told stories from the scriptures. So she starts the process of trying to convert them right over to the atheist belief. So no religion is allowed in camp. But as the kids start to get sick, even Mother starts to question herself whether or not she's the cause of the illness. But regardless, her mission is to protect the children and to make sure the humans survive, right? As atheists. that's kind of an interesting. I don't know. I kind of find that interesting, and it shows like the artificial intelligence of an android that can question itself. I mean, it's very it's kind of disturbing, but it's reassuring, right? Like if you have a robot, if it has ability to question itself, um, then at least it has the ability to change. And if it doesn't, then you're kind of just screwed, right? Like if the robot decides to take a certain course of action, regardless of what the results are, it's going to follow that course, and there's nothing you can do. So it's kind of nice that the two androids are able to question themselves. So mother's, she's concerned that the children are getting sick, and she takes off to the Ark, and she wants to wipe out the rest of the survivors. So she's flying over there, and she's screaming and trying to kill anything that happens to be alive. Um, but the reason for her going there is to pick up medicine. So she thinks like maybe some of the medicine that the humans have might be able to save the sick children. And the children are getting sick. The original batch of kids were able to survive for years before they start, before they succumb to the illness. Well, this group has only been there for a couple of days or several days, and they're coughing up blood and they're feeling really bad. Um, so she really wants to try and help them out. Um, so in episode 3, it's called, the title of this episode is Virtual Faith, and the reason why it has that title is it shows the backstory, these flashbacks of Marcus and Sue um, on the Ark making their journey to Kepler 22, and again it shows the efficiency. So the efficiency of the androids are that they can just survive indefinitely, right? And it's this, they have to travel like light years to get to this new planet, where the humans, I think the trip was like 13 years. It took 13 years to get from the home planet to Kepler 22. So what the humans did on the Ark was they were put into like suspended animation, um, but their mind was allowed to survive in kind of this virtual reality. So for 13 years, they were living in this virtual reality, and Marcus and Sue, basically were able to spend time with Paul and get to know them. And so that's why when they land on the planet and they wake up, they're very close as a family. So that's kind of a cool concept, right? And I'm not sure if that's how we're going to eventually travel in the future. That kind of makes sense. It doesn't make sense for us to send somebody, like years uh, on a spaceship and expect them to just live live out their life on a tiny little spaceship for years, right? So it kind of makes sense, like if you could put them into some sort of suspended animation, and their mind can be in this virtual world, and like virtually you can do anything. You can go to different places, you can do different activities, and you can still be stimulated. So mother finds the medicine. Um, the humans, the Mithraic humans, are hiding out in these cracks that were created when the Ark crashed into the mountain, and there's like weird noises coming from the cracks. So I don't know if that's where the creatures came from. Maybe when the Ark crashed into the mountains, maybe these creatures were living underground in caves and stuff, and the spaceship crashing and opening up these caves release these creatures um, outside. And so, but we never see them. We just hear like noises, right? Um, so the Mithraic people are hiding out in the caves. Mother goes in and she's like, blasting the area with her screams, gets the medicine, and she like, flies back to the camp. Well, while she's at the camp, this is kind of interesting. The kids uh, convince Campion like they need to get out of there. Like they're getting sick, they might get killed. Uh, maybe mother's killing everybody. She's malfunctioning or something. So they convince Campion to get on board with them, and they'll escape the camp and head out to where the Ark crashed, and maybe they can find some adults and other humans to go and live with. Um, so in order to get away from father, uh, Campion locks him in the food shed, and then they run off into the woods. so so when mother comes back, you know, I mean, obviously, father was able to escape because like the food shed is has like this wooden door that's made out of trees, planks of wood. So he just like punched a hole in the wall and got out. But the kids were already gone at that point. Um, so he goes to the space shuttle, and he can identify them because all the kids have some kind of a tracking device built into them. And he sees where they are. They're running off into the woods. And then that's when he discovers the reason why the kids are getting sick. And and the reason is not because of mother. So so the crops that they were planting, and they kind of mentioned this, I think, in episode 2, like Campion was the Mithraic soldiers came over and they were, you know, having a meal with the androids. They didn't realize that the mother and father were androids, and so they allowed them to come in and have some food. And Campion had mentioned like don't eat the pits of the food because they're poisonous. Um, well, what happens is the pits actually, as it deteriorates and gets old, it becomes radioactive, and then that's what ends up making the kids sick. So, so it's not mother and father. Mother's fine. She's operating the way she is. She's kind of creepy, but that's normal for her. And so she eventually finds out from father like, okay, these things are what's killing the kids. So that seems like an easy solution. Um, so father goes out, retrieves all the kids except for Paul, and Paul gets separated because he's trying to find his mouse in the woods. So he eventually finds the mouse, but when he looks up, all the kids, had continued on without him, and so he ends up getting lost. The interesting part is that so father rescues the rest of the kids, but Paul is wandering around in the woods and he's hearing a child singing, and to me it sounds like Tally. That's just me. So Tally is one of the original kids, and she didn't die from the sickness. She didn't get sick and die. She actually wandered outside of the village and fell into a hole, one of these large holes that are in the area. So we don't know if she actually died. She might have actually survived. And but we hear her voice, or I think it's her voice, in the woods, and then that's basically how it ends. So we don't know what happens to Paul. I'll have to watch episode 4. So that's episode 3. There is a scene where one of the creatures attacks Paul, and father saves Paul by tackling the creature and locking the creature in the food shed. So now, in episode 3, they caught one of the creatures. So hopefully in episode 4 we find out more about what this creature is. I have my suspicions on what it is. I don't know. I might be reaching there, but it could be like mutated humans. It could be, the remains of the children that died, and they basically buried them. So they could have, mutated or something and turned into these creatures. We don't know. So anyway, that's what I'm looking forward to in episode 4. Well, also at the end of episode 3, the Mithraic soldiers, Marcus actually finally convinces them to march down to rescue the children. So maybe there's going to be a confrontation between the humans and the androids again, and hopefully, I kind of want Marcus to survive, Marcus and Sue, because they're not really, again, like, they're not part of the Mithraic religious group. They're actually on the side of the android. So I don't know why they don't just tell them that. Um, but yeah, I kind of want to see them get back together with Paul, and and be a happy family on this planet. Um, so we'll see what happens. That's episode 3. Episode 4 is out right now. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out on HBOMax. Um, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And if you guys haven't had a chance to check out Cobra Kai, if you guys are a fan of um, Karate Kid, Cobra Kai it it was very surprising to me. I avoided it. I wasn't sure if I would have liked it. A lot of these kind of spin-offs from older. I mean, this was back in the '80s, right? The original um, Karate Kid. There's no Pat Morita, and on top of that, it's called Cobra Kai, so it's like it's about the bad guys, right? Well, you'd be very surprised with this one. It's great if you love the '80s. It's all '80s music, which is kind of strange because even when they're showing the kids, um, they're playing '80s music. I don't think there's any like current music. Even they have current renditions of '80s songs, but I think all the music is '80s music. Um, and it's just funny because the dude Johnny, like I don't know if you remember Johnny, he was like the bad guy. Uh, his character just cracks me up. I mean, he starts off as like like in the movie Karate Kid, he was just a douche, right? Um, and he's still that way. Uh, but you get to see another side of him. But the funny thing is, like, he was stuck in time. Like, he still has a flip phone. He doesn't know anything about the internet and about apps and stuff like that. It's kind of neat. Like as he starts getting more students, they teach him more of the modern things. Um, so yeah, that's Cobra Kai. I'm kind of sad. Like I watched all of episode 2, so there's only 2 episodes on Netflix. So I'm pretty much done. I have to wait to episode 3. I mean, season 3. Seasons 1 and 2 are on Netflix. It ends with kind of a cliffhanger, so it's kind of bum. I have to wait for the next season to come out. But episode 1 ends like it was a great ending. Episode 2 picks up and it's really good. I'll do a whole review on Cobra Kai. But anyway, yeah, that's it. Hope everybody had a great Wednesday. We're kind of heading towards the weekend again. We're going to be locked down for another 2 more weeks. I hope everybody's prepared for that. At least you can go to the beach, parks, and hikes by yourself, right? By yourself, solo. Uh, we'll see how that goes. I'm kind of curious to see what happens there. And yeah, just everybody stay safe. Um, we're still required to wear masks wherever we go. Um, Traveling is for essential things only. You're still not allowed to go over to your friend's house. You're still not allowed to gather. Um, and yeah, that's going to be for another 2 more weeks. And I don't see them at the end of 2 weeks. I don't see that really changing much. So, but who knows, right? We don't know. There's no rhyme or reason for these rules, so we don't know what's going to happen. So anyway, everybody be safe, have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.